Hi everyone. Today in our episode we have a very special guest, Jaya Nepal. In fact, every guest is a special in our podcast, and as I introduce it in the way because, well, in a sense, they work in different research domains. So I would like to introduce them as special. So Jay is from Nepal, and he is currently a postdoctoral researcher at the Sustainable Cropping Systems Laboratory at Cornell University College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And he recently graduated with PhD in soil and water sciences from the University of Florida. And congratulations again on this. Also obtained his master's in international agricultural development from the University of Tokyo. He has a broad research experience in the field of soil science and agronomy. I also would like to note that, Jay, you are free to mention any source, articles, ongoing research, names, books, and so on. And all the sources and the links would be provided in the description section for the listeners. Before we start, I would like to mention that this podcast is independent from my academic research. However, my goal is to make scientific discussions and research findings accessible to a wider audience. Welcome to the podcast, Jay. This was a rather brief introduction from my end, but for the listening audience, you could tell more about your research background and introduce yourself.
Sounds good. Thank you, Naz. And yeah, hello to everyone. Hello to your audience. And it is a great pleasure, actually, for me to be introduced to you through the social media, through the power of social media, I guess. And we are doing this podcast, so it feels great. Like you said, I'm from Nepal. My name is Jay. It also has a Nepal in my surname. So my family name is also Nepal, which is interesting to some people. That's not because I'm from King family. It's just, it is. I got that one. My research is focused on nutrient cycling in agroecosystems. That would be how I would summarize it. I did my undergrad back home in my country, where I studied different biochars and how it can be applied for vegetable production in Nepal. Then, like you said, I moved to Tokyo, where I did my master's. Actually, for my master's, I worked, had a field work in Africa where I compared two different phosphate fertilizers. So I was working on utilizing the local phosphate fertilizers in Burkina Faso and comparing it with a traditional phosphorus-based fertilizers. I also did some crop modeling work back in Tokyo, which I'm planning to get back to again here during my postdoc. So yeah, looking forward to that. And like you mentioned, recently I did my PhD from University of Florida, again, soil and water sciences. And my work was focused on evaluating the performance of different soil amendments, but mainly carbon nanomaterials and biochar on how it affects crop growth and how it affects soil quality and things like that. So that was my basic PhD topic.
Yeah, I will just stop you right there because we are going to discuss about your PhD work later on. Yes, first, I would like to start with your PhD research because, yeah, it's quite interesting. Could you tell us more about your PhD research at the University of Florida?
Sure. Well, before I dive in, let me give you a bit of a context, I guess, because my PhD work, like I mentioned, was at the University of Florida. And Florida is unique because it is in the coastal line of United States. So most of the soils we have is very sandy soil. So almost looks like sand. It has in excess of 90% of sand particles. So it is really quite challenging to manage these soils. If you look at traditionally or historically, I think these soils have been successfully managed in the past, mainly due to the successful citrus industry. Citrus is a big industry here in Florida. But in the recent years, this industry is in a bit of a decline, mainly due to citrus greening and other diseases. So farmers are looking for different options. And also there's a lot of push in the research in alternative crops. So In my research, we're looking at 3 different crops: lettuce, corn, as well as sugar beet. I think these 3 are potential candidates as an alternative crops that farmers would like to grow. But coming back to the soil again, it is very challenging to grow row crops in such soils because nutrient leaching is a big concern. And also because the temperature is very high and also it rains a lot in Florida. So it is not really easy to maintain a good degree of soil organic matter. So basically, coming back to my PhD topic, my goal was to test different soil amendments to increase the nutrient retention in soil, and also if we can help the crop growth. So we tried with different soil amendments, but 2 of the soil amendments that we found most promising, like I mentioned before, were carbon nanomaterials and biochar.
Yep. Of course, when actually how it happened is that we were, of course, we follow each other on online as well. I've been looking through the posts while I was preparing for this interview, and I came across the term carbon nanomaterials. Sounds very catchy, and yeah, for me, I have no idea about it, so very interesting. I think it would be nice if you could explain to the audience more about carbon nanomaterials and how is it made and why did you choose them for your study? Also, what are the effects it can have on crops, soils, and environmental quality?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to introduce that to you and also to your audience. Let's start with what a nanomaterial is. As the name suggests, it has nano and material. So basically, any material that has its particles size in the nanoscale is known as a nanoparticle. So when we say nanoscale, it means a billionth of a meter. So really tiny scale. I mean, if you are a technology geek, you can think about as nano chips that people are manufacturing for their smartphones and all those devices. And these nanomaterials exist in nature, so it is not something that human only can engineer. It is already in the nature. If you look at in the context of soil, the clay particles are actually nanoparticles, or let's say some percentage of clay particles are nanoparticles. If you look at human blood cells or DNA, also in the soil, microbial DNA, these kind of things are naturally occurring nanoparticles. But when I say carbon nanomaterial, or when we hear different nanomaterials in the context of research and application, it usually is engineered nanomaterials. So we are talking about human engineered nanomaterials. So basically, we are kind of engineering materials at a nanoscale and try to use advantage of these nanoscale properties. So what happens when we change any material into a nanoscale is we are reducing the particle size a lot. So we are exposing basically soil or a plant to a larger surface area, and also a different unique properties that comes with nanomaterial. Coming back to carbon nanomaterials, again, any carbon form in the form of nanoscale particles is carbon nanomaterials. You might have heard about carbon nanotubes, fullerenes, buckyballs. There can be different kinds of carbon nanomaterials. It really depends on the size of the material or the structure of the material and different forms that it is available. So for example, if it's in a tube form, it's known as nanotube, or if it's a round form, it's known as fullerenes, and so on. Coming back to my research, we worked with amorphous carbon nanomaterials, which was water soluble or water dispersible. So let me start with how it is created, because that is one of the reasons why we selected this nanomaterial. It is created actually from the product of any combustion industry. So for example, when the farmers are burning their crop byproducts, or these are being burned in the industrial. So anything that stays in the, how do we call it, the drum or the kiln of the industry. It is commonly known as carbon black. So it is the byproduct of any combustion industry. So we are taking that carbon black and we are converting that into carbon nanomaterials with different treatments. We can definitely provide the link for the audience to see, because it's been patented and it can be viewed online now. So we can definitely provide that link to so the audience can see how exactly it's being made.
Yes.
Yes, and
yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
That would be provided in the description. Yeah.
Okay, so coming back to why we selected carbon nanomaterials, because first we did a lot of behind the desk experiments kind of thing. So we tried different bunch of amendments, because we are looking at anything that can increase the nutrient retention in sandy soils. So carbon nanomaterial was one of them, and also biochar. And what another quality that we are looking is for any material. Again, biochar is different because it's kind of well known, but for any new material, so that farmers can apply it through the existing their irrigation or fertilizer application systems. So we were looking for some any particle that is water soluble or water dispersible. So turns out that other carbon nanomaterials are not water dispersible, but this material was water dispersible. So we could actually put it in the solution form and apply it through the existing fertigation system that is quite common. It can be drip irrigation or central pivot, any method. So yeah, that's why we selected these materials basically. So yeah, that's basically a carbon nanomaterials.
Mhm. And there was also somehow mentioned biochar in your description. Could you tell our audience what biochar is, and what is it? What's its applications, and how it's different from carbon nanomaterials?
Basically, it is again a form of carbon that has been pyrolyzed, so it can be produced again from the byproducts or crop residue. I think that two main differences between biochar and carbon nanomaterials. First, how it's made. Biochar is prepared in oxygen limited environment, so you burn any crop residues or any organic matter for that matter in an oxygen limited environment at usually 300 to 700 degrees Celsius temperature. It's a controlled process. So that's how a biochar is made. But when it comes to carbon nanomaterials, there are other methods that they are made, usually by either a top-bottom approach or bottom-up approach. So, but it doesn't have to be limited with oxygen. So that's the main difference. And when it comes to the size of the particles, that's the second difference. Biochar is more bulky material, so it can be in the, let's say, millimeter range or inches range, or it can even be bigger depending on the purpose and the material that they are prepared from or the way they are prepared from. So, but in the context of nanomaterial, it is really it has to be in the nano form. So it has to be, the particles has to be in the nanoscale. So yeah, these two are, I guess, the main difference between these two particles.
Could you tell a little more about the opportunities and challenges in general with carbon nanomaterials and nanotechnology applications in agriculture?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think, yeah, whether you know it or not, or whether you have an idea, but I think we are already surrounded by a lot of nanoparticles. It has been already being manufactured and used in a lot of different things. I think especially in the field of material engineering and electronics, like I mentioned to you before, the microchips or the nanochips, and also different materials. You can hear nanofibers, or if you're a fan of jackets, they're like nano puff jackets or something like that. So it is very common. So I think coming back to the context of agriculture, I think it is still relatively new, and there's a lot of research going on. It is really an active field of research. I think if I had to anticipate in the future, I think nanotechnology will be quite prevalent in the field of agriculture, especially the nanosensors, which are basically extremely effective sensors that you can put in different systems. I think those will be really useful in the field. So these can be used for detecting disease or detecting soil conditions or field conditions or flowering or these kind of things. And a lot of these materials are being used, tried, and these will be really useful, I think, when it comes with precision agriculture and all these technological farming systems. When it comes to amendments, soil amendments or plant amendments, I think there's also a big potential, but also there is, let's say, some concerns about its implications. I think that is going to be really important or challenging to determine the mechanisms behind its effect and try to use it as an amendment. So, for example, I recently read an article, and also there was a BBC news or documentary about it. We can definitely put that in the link again. So they are using these nano clay particles to convert the desert. I think it was in Arizona, into farming land. So that is already happening, and there are some really interesting results there. So converting the marginal lands into something that is productive, I think nanotechnology can be really exciting field in the future. So yeah, I saw that documentary and I was fascinated by it. So we should put that in the link. So yeah, I think in the coming years, as the technology grows and the farmers are getting more and more technical, I guess, I think nanotechnology will be a big thing in farming. That is what I can see now. It may change in the future, but that's what I anticipate.
Yeah, in fact, I also came across very interesting. I cannot remember the name of the documentary, but they were showing that, I'm not sure how the research is going on at the moment. They are finding, making a spray with nanomaterials for the plants, that when you
Yeah.
spray, when you include those nanomaterials and spray it in the plants, those small sensors, it's sensors that would be attached to the
Yeah.
plant, and
Yeah.
under a certain time, it can measure the crop health.
This next level, but it's being done and it's been tried, and I think that's really exciting. That's why I mentioned
Yeah,
nanosensors in the first, because that's really interesting.
it's being done. It's actually being done. Well, we all know, and that I'm a space enthusiast, and I love
Oh yes.
everything associated. And yeah, of course, this was being done by NASA. Actually, the researchers were collaborating with NASA to developing these sensors.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, yeah, there was a good collaboration between my University of Florida, and NASA, and they were trying. They had the moon soil, and they were growing different crops and using these technologies. So yeah, really exciting, really exciting.
It's not related to the topic, but yeah, still this kind of things. And today as well, this whole episode, I was sitting on the moon, and
Yeah, I can see that.
this
See that.
this actually photo has a very good story. It's called Earthrise. So
Earthrise.
yeah, it's people went to the moon and they discovered the Earth for the first time.
That's true. That's true. The potential of Earth. You're right.
Yeah. Okay. After some small space talk, coming back to the biochar, can biochar be considered a promising solution for carbon sequestration? Also, are there any limitations, concerns, and challenges associated with using biochar in agricultural fields?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I would say that there is quite a lot of excitement and opportunities in application of biochar. my project, my PhD project was not looking at that, so I cannot maybe give you some results from my project, but from what I've read and what I'm reading even now, and actually I'm currently at Cornell, like you mentioned. So Dr. Johannes Lehmann and their group are one of the pioneers of biochar applications. So they've been working on biochar for more than 20 years now. So they're really excited about that. And I went to the seminar talk, I think it was last week, and yeah, Dr. Debbie from their group, and yeah, they have really interesting data when it comes to. They were also using modeling and also long-term field trials of using biochar, and they are seeing really promising results when it comes to reduction of the greenhouse gas emission, or also potential for carbon sequestration in the soil. So they're seeing a lot of progress in that. I think there's more opportunity in the coarse texture soil. They were mentioning that there's an island near New York, Long Island, and it was most effective there, but also in other soils, it has some potential. Coming to the challenges or limitation, I think, again, quantifying these effects is going to be really difficult, also important, but challenging, because if you ask a farmer who is applying a biochar, they're really eager for us or for researchers to come up with a way that we can quantify these carbon sequestration so that they can get some carbon credits or benefits of using biochar for environmental use. So I think quantifying and finding different indicators specifically related to biochar is going to be really important and also challenging, I think. And also, I think down the line, if you really come up with indicators, I think scaling up biochar production and application in the field scales, because it is still a bulky particle, and we need to kind of burn a lot of crop residues for that. So I think coming up with large enough amount of biochar for, let's say, big farms, I think that is probably going to be the next step. But yeah, for now, I think quantifying and finding different indicators to will be really the first step, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's nice to see that your research group is doing a great work in terms of biochar and trying to find a solution as well. A solution that is that benefits farmers and as well solves the carbon sequestration problem at the same time. So that's what we are striving. Yeah, and I can see that you have already published some of your works already, and as I said, listeners can find your published works in the description. Of course, not all of them, but few of them would be provided. And can you briefly tell our audience what your major findings were from your own research?
Sure thing. Yeah. So we are looking at carbon nanomaterials and biochar as soil amendments for sandy soils. Again, repeating the same thing, but it's really important to understand the context, I think, because the soil type is really important here. And we were trying different application rates of carbon nanomaterials, especially, and also biochar. I think what the main finding was carbon nanomaterials was really effective at lower to medium application rates. So by lower to medium, I mean about 200 to 400 ppm, which is parts per million, or if you look at the SI unit, it will be milligram per kg. So at really small quantity, it was really effective in retaining a lot of nutrients from the soil and also improving crop growth. So we conducted the study in different crops, like I mentioned, lettuce, sugar beet, as well as corn. So in all the experiments, we found that carbon nanomaterials, when applied at really low concentrations, was increasing the crop growth, both biological and economical yields. And this was mainly driven by the increase in nutrient retention and uptake by the crops, especially potassium. So we could see throughout all our studies, greenhouse, field, incubation studies, that consistently we found that the potassium uptake in crops were really high in carbon nanomaterial applied soil and plants. So yes, I think what I didn't mention before, getting a little bit deep into the mechanisms, I will probably not go into everything, but what these carbon nanomaterials have is a negatively charged surface, and it attracts to the soil cations. And it really has, or seems to have, good synergy with potassium cations in the soil. As a result, it is not only retaining these cations from the soil, but also crops are able to uptake a lot of these nutrients. And as a result, we could see an increase in crop growth, especially biomass and also yields. So coming back to the biochar, I think biochar, we saw a lot of effect mainly in the soil physical properties, things such as soil structure, soil aggregation, and soil pH. Also, biochar raised soil pH, which is kind of important here because we also have a lot of acidic soils that have pH, let's say 4.5 to 5.5. So biochar was able to raise this pH, which was important. And also we could see some, let's say, non-significant increases in soil fertility parameters, but that was mainly because really biochar needs a longer time than carbon nanomaterials to be applied in soil. So we expect that if we continue to use biochar, it will have significant effects also in that. Again, when it comes to the crop growth, especially, we didn't see, let's say, a significant increase in crop growth with biochar as we saw with carbon nanomaterials. And again, length of time is important. Like I mentioned, biochar needs longer incubation time. But also what we found from our study is that biochar was retaining a lot of nutrients, in fact, sometimes more than carbon nanomaterials, but it was not releasing as much. So the crops were not able to uptake those nutrients. So I think because of the biochar surface area and its porosity, it was retaining nutrients, but the crops were not. So I think in the future, what we could look at is ways we can not only retain more nutrients from biochar, but also release more nutrients into crops. So I think to summarize, that's a long discussion, but I think the main findings was carbon nanomaterials at really low concentrations increase nutrient retention and also crop growth, while biochar had some effect or some increase in nutrient retention, but crop growth not so much, but that was mainly because biochar needs longer time.
Thank you. So based on your previous discussions as well, looking at the bigger picture, how would you reconcile your PhD research and your experience as a researcher into the current state of agriculture and the climate globally? Also tackling some of the global issues such as food insecurity and climate change, which is very essential at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, it is a really difficult question to answer, to be honest. But yeah, based on my PhD experience, what I would say, not only with these materials, but any exciting materials that we see, there is a, let's say, increase in nutrient retention, or there is an increase in crop biomass yields, but it is really, really important to understand the mechanisms behind it. So we tried to do some of that, but we couldn't do all of that. So I think my basic take-home message will be, before recommending any product, for example, we need to be really sure about its mechanisms and try to really understand how it behaves in soil. For example, when we apply nanoparticles in the soil, does it remain in the soil for a long time? How does it interferes with the soil microorganisms or soil organic matter and these kind of things? I think understanding the mechanisms and really trying to do a life cycle assessment or a really comprehensive assessment, I think is going to be really important, because yeah, we certainly don't want nanomaterials or any materials for that matter to be the next big contaminants in the soil or plant system. So we need to be really careful about recommending any such things. So I think if you look at globally right now, there is really no specific regulations when it comes to nanoparticles. So these are regulated under the existing chemical substances or existing regulations. So I think it is going to be really important to come up with standard regulations for regulating nanoparticles in specifically. So I think, looking at the bigger picture, we do want to solve the existing problems, food security, like you mentioned, climate change, and there is potential. We should really be excited about that, but we should also be careful, and we should pay enough attention that we don't leave our next generation with these as a contaminant. So I think it's really exciting, but also we need to look at potential limitations or implications.
Yeah, I agree. As well, I guess you mentioned that nanoparticles, of course, we are trying to, you are trying to use it in your research for the sandy soils, and
Yes.
globally, biochar, maybe it's unsuitable for the more rainy regions of the planet, because the rain would wash out the biochar at the end, or maybe it would emit some toxins when there's a lot of rain. Well, that's just my assumption, because I might be wrong, because given the historical discovery of Terra preta in South America, I might be largely wrong, but still I'm trying to get into this topic.
That is definitely true. I think that was one of the motivation behind developing biochar. So yes, absolutely. Historically,
I'm still trying to bring more people into this conversation, and thank you again for agreeing to this and talking again with a new topic, that's carbon nanoparticles. This is a new topic for me, carbon nanomaterials.
Absolutely.
So we talked about your past work, your PhD, and the previous the research outputs as well. But what is your current research at Cornell University, and what are your research plans now and in near future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I just joined here, let's say roughly a month ago. So it is still a developing research plan. So we're discussing it, and we're trying to come up with different research ideas and how to implement. But I think to speak to you very generally about it, I think I'll be working in the organic systems now. So this is slightly different than the systems I've been working before. So I think the main goal of this system is to use the cover crops or different ecological practices in organic systems to maximize the crop growth, but also soil health. I think that those two are the main focus here at this lab. So I will be working in the areas of that. So I think I will be working in the cover crop soybean and cover crop corn rotations, and try to, with my experience in soil, try to, let's say, maximize the nutrient cycling in these organic systems, and basically help farmers with adaptive management strategies in different systems, because they have the no-till organic systems, tilled organic system, strip till organic systems, and all these systems. So trying to come up with those strategies would be my main focus in one way or another. So there may be some other projects, especially I'm interested in, like I mentioned to you before, in exploring crop modeling again. So I will partly be also working with a group at Cornell, but also at Iowa State University to use long-term simulations using crop modeling tools to basically see how we can adapt our practices with the climate change. So I'm really interested in exploring that field as well. So that will be another part, and also maybe potentially I'll be working. I'll have to write the grant first, but if that gets through and everything goes to plan, I'll be working in kind of developing soil health indicators for organic systems.
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah,
all the
thank you.
best
Thank you.
wishes. Yeah. Please keep us updated, and the
Absolutely.
listeners,
Yeah.
you will find Jay's online. I will provide, if you don't mind,
Yes.
and you can
sure,
reach out
sure.
to him.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, what's your dream research project that you would like to work in the future?
Oh, yeah, that really is interesting now. Dream. So let's see. I think, yeah, I don't want to go to moon, but I do want to study moon soil if that's possible. So yeah, if you can find your
We are
way
back to the
into
moon conversation.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can find your way into the moon or NASA somehow, maybe we'll have more soils to work with from the moon. But for now, I think I will I will stick to my expertise or knowledge in nutrient cycling. I think I want to develop strategies to maximize nutrient cycling in organic systems. So to come up with adaptive strategies, especially with the ongoing climate change issues we have. So if we can really help the farmers to not only like give one solution, but different solution that they can adapt depending on uh, on on how the climate scenario evolves. I think that will be something I want to dive into, I guess. So yeah, using different approaches, field and also crop models. I think I really want to explore that field. So I think somewhere, let's say in 5 to 10 years, it is likely that I will be working in that field. I may or may not be successful, or it may not be really exciting. But yeah, I think for now, I think that is really something that drives me.
Yeah. First of all, about the moon soil. Yes.
Yeah.
I guess that's, of course, amazing to hear that. Yeah, we are trying to, actually, NASA is trying to build a moon base. Now, the space race started again between countries. I am again very happy to be living in this time when India launched there and Japan is going again. Very nice.
Yes.
I believe that they are also opening research for different domains than engineering and then rather than software engineers. So I'm very happy to see that they're also looking for researchers from our domain. They want to, of course, grow the crops. They want to know how to feed, how to recycle, and they're also trying to implement the circular system into their into the space station. It's very nice. Again, coming back to farmers, I really like the point that where you mentioned that we should offer farmers not only one solution and multiple solutions where they could opt from, because I think this is also essential in Europe at the moment. I'm not sure if you heard of or the farmers are striking, and because they are under huge pressure from policymakers. And I guess if we try to offer not very limited solutions, multiple of them, where they could opt from and adapt depending on their preferences, that would be actually very essential at this point.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, great. And there are some, to conclude this episode, I would like to ask you some general questions. Yeah, there is no time limitation, so you can just take your time. As for me, I think this kind of general questions are also essential. So first, if you are ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so you have traveled across a lot of countries for your study and your research, and that's, I think, very interesting. How has living and studying in different parts of the world influenced you as a researcher? or as a person, because you have done your research in Japan and also did some field work or in West Africa, from Nepal to US, and they also have different. I'm not sure if they have a different training for the academics.
Yeah, I'm basically living the dream of a researcher, traveling to different places and also doing science. So I cannot complain about that. Yeah, I think it's really different and also similarities. I think what I would say is that there are some differences everywhere, which and you can take a lot from that. I think I've been very lucky to work with different supervisors in different countries. So they all have their different, let's say, different style of mentoring people. I think that's really crucial because eventually, as a scientists and also educators, our goal is to become a mentor in the future. Certainly, mine is. So I think I could really pick up some great things from my supervisors in different places. So I would say I'm really blessed to have that experience in that regard. And also research, I think there are differences, and there are some things I really like from Japan, and there's something I really like from here. So eventually, when I want to build my own program, I think I can incorporate those in my programs. The students may have different opinions, so that's a different issue. But I think also culturally, I think it's really interesting for me to see how culture affects research and also the work environment in general. So uh, and also farmers, the way they look at things is really different because, for example, as a researcher, even though you have one finding, you cannot say the same finding, let's say, to the farmers in Africa compared to farmers in Tokyo, for example, or New York. So the farmer's perception is different, and you have to kind of adapt to that perception, and that's really been kind of helpful to evolve and understand. I'm still understanding because here farmers are really active. They have worked with the university for a long time, so they have a lot of experience. I think what I would say is, yeah, whenever we are talking about science or results, it's really important to connect with farmers. That has been my main takeaways because we kind of sometimes tend to work in a bubble, let's say, in our own academic bubble, and we sometimes
That's true.
don't think a lot about farmers and interact with farmers. So yeah, I think eventually farmers are going to be the ones who are driving the research and adapting these technologies. So really to stay connected with farmers and what their challenges are, like you mentioned, the riots or the strikes in Europe. So that is probably because we kind of neglected the farmers or their opinions for a long time that they had to do that. So yeah, I think it's really important to connect with farmers. That's kind of been my main learning. I am still learning, but I think I've been really blessed to interact with different farmers, professors, students, different opinions. So yeah, I think that'll be my answer to your question.
Diversity of thoughts
Yes,
and
totally.
experience provides resilience. Diversity provides resilience. Yes. So coming back to the research experience, how do you think, what are the most important skills required to be a successful researcher?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think coming from experience, and I've been guilty of that. So what I would say is first, I think about the experiment you're doing. What I mean by that is designing the experiment is really the uh, let's say the start of the successful experiment. And oftentimes we as a researcher or especially students, we don't consult enough with the statistician or anyone who has a really good idea of designing experiments. So again, I have been guilty of that because we go to we seek for help with statistics after we have our data. Like, hey, I have this data, I want to analyze, how do I analyze, and all these kind of things. But the right time actually to go to a statistician or to understand how to design an experiment is actually before the experiment. So I I did that mistake. So I want to tell that to other people, that if you have that opportunity to talk to a statistic guy, or it can be your supervisor, to see that your experiment design is actually really solid, and that can give you the answers that you're looking for, or if there are limitations, where we can maneuver that. I think that is really, really important when we do any science or research, but especially field research, because we are investing a lot of resources, and quite often we're also taking times of different farmers. We are taking their land, or we're asking them to do a lot of things. And at the end of the day, if we find out that we didn't design the experiment to give answers that we're looking for, I think that will be a shame. So I would say that going to a statistician, or just making sure that your experimental design is solid before starting science, is really will keep you in good shape when it comes to analysis. You obviously might have to learn that part again, but you at least have done the experiment well. So yeah, I think that would be my big message, especially to students, but also maybe to other researchers.
It's a
Exactly.
painful, very painful
Yeah,
lesson.
it is. Yeah, it is. And yeah, I learned it the hard way. So I'm not saying that I did it right from the first time, but yeah, I think it's something you can definitely learn and improve, for sure.
Yeah, I can completely relate. So yeah, recently you finished your PhD research. Again,
Mhm.
congratulations. And yeah,
Thank
we
you.
usually talk about work-life balance. Um,
Mm.
academic research work-life balance is quite different than other work-life balance, than industry work-life balance. And so how do you spend your leisure time? How do you manage your timing, and or if you have any hobbies, interests?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I like to travel. I think to be in nature is really, it really motivates me. It gives me ideas, I guess, also, but also kind of relaxes me. So I do a lot of hiking, biking, trails, and all these kind of things. I think I would say for any scientist, try to be in nature whenever you can, is really important. Again, I don't want to make it like a lesson or something, but yeah, like Elon Musk would say, touch the grass. It really helps. I also love sports, so I do a lot different sports. I play soccer, cricket, ping pong, badminton, whichever sports. I'm not good at most of them, but I still play. I think that is a really good release of pressure at times, but I also enjoy it. Uh, and yeah, spend time with friends, family. I think social activities are also really important, and yeah, that really recharges me. So yeah, I would say nature, sports, and friends.
Mhm, mhm. So I agree. How do you think about the use of social media as a tool for scientists and researchers? Are you a fan, or is there something you dislike about it?
I'm a big fan. I'm a big proponent of using social media. Again, like you mentioned before, diversifying the way we do anything is going to build resilience. So that's why diversifying the way we spread information to people is really important, especially for us scientists. Uh, I think social media and also podcasts or videos are really, really important when it comes to communicating science with people who we actually want to do science for. Like I mentioned before, it is tricky at times because social media can be an interesting place. So I can see why some people are kind of skeptical about it, but I think as long as you stick to some principles and try to communicate the right science, I think you will come out eventually. I think what we also saw during the COVID times is if the scientists like us, because some of the times the scientists have the perception that our job is to do the work and it's somebody else's job to kind of take up that information or let's say distribute that information. But we can see that if we don't do it by ourselves, it may lead to that gap, the communication gap, and it might not go to the intended audience sort of. So because we could see that uh, even now, if we go to the social media, not many scientists are actually there. So it really is important, I think, because for people to believe in facts and science is going to be really important. And that's why I think scientists, researchers need to be there. Yeah, there are some caveats that we need to be careful of, but I think overall, I'm a big fan of using social media. So if I do uh, uh, take a position in the future or start research, I'll definitely be there. So I can promise you that.
I would like to mention that what you mentioned, the great point, very essential point, that we live in a bubble as academics.
Mhm.
That's really true, that we make our research and everything, but it's somehow not communicated well, or it's stays in the bubble within us, that we keep citing each other's work, and we
Yeah.
are aware of it, but the society as a whole is not benefiting from it. Of course, our H score could increase, or any score, or we would get the appreciation from our colleagues within academic
Mhm.
world. We would be respected, but as a like the is society benefiting from it? That's what you're trying
Yeah,
to
and
say. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And to realize that whether you are a fan of social media or you may not be a fan, but it is kind of where the society is going. I think to realize that and try to spread information from that way is really important for scientists.
Yeah, it's an easier way to reach out to the bigger
Yes,
audience. Yep, I agree. Completely
exactly.
agree. Okay, we are trying to fix that
Yeah.
as well. I see a lot of enthusiasts, and there are lots of scientific podcasts recently became top in general podcast
Yes.
ranking. So
Yes.
that's, I think, a big achievement. Last question: what
Mm.
advice would you like to give to your younger self?
My younger self. I would say don't be afraid of asking questions. I think a lot of times I used to be like that because I didn't want to make people upset. And I didn't ask enough questions at different times, I guess, not only during science, but also education and growing up. So yeah, that is the advice. You can, if you ask it well, and if you ask it for the right intention, don't be afraid of asking questions. Don't be afraid of upsetting people. And if you don't ask questions, you don't get enough answers, and that may create uh, a knowledge gap within you, and also it can also help the other people when you ask questions, especially if it's a constructive question, or it can even be a criticism. I think that's how the society or the science evolves also. So yeah, asking more questions would be an advice I would give to younger me, and also other young people out there.
Yeah, thank you. I think I recently read a quote from some scientist, or maybe it was just a general quote from
Mm,
Instagram. Um,
could be.
don't be afraid to look stupid, be afraid to look smart, but not knowing the thing. So, in a general concept explained. And I love
Mhm.
I would like to thank professors or any researchers who, when you ask the question, they reply. Um, I just ask, okay, excuse me, maybe this is a very stupid question, but they correct me.
Mhm.
No, there is no such thing as stupid question.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's just
Exactly.
amazing. Amazing. And thank you for sharing your experience about your research work. It was something that I've learned today. Of course, we cannot talk everything in one episode, and all the sources would be provided in the description as well. I also would like to read more. Now I'm more enthusiastic, and it seems like this is where the future is heading towards. Very amazing, and thank you. So if you can find Jaya Nepal in the description online, all the links would be provided to his work as well, him on social media. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Naz, and it was a great pleasure. And I agree that we couldn't probably discuss everything that we wanted. Not enough of Moon, certainly, but it was a good discussion, I guess. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you for having me. And
Thank you.
yeah, let's stay connected in the future. And yeah, definitely.
Definitely,
stay in touch.
I'm very optimistic that maybe in the future you would be creating nanoparticles and I would be applying precision agriculture, and we would write a research proposal. And yeah, great, sounds good.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, sounds exciting. Yes.
And
I
then
agree.
together we go to the moon base or Mars
Yeah.
base, maybe, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
Sounds
Yeah.
great.
Exciting
Thank
times.
you. Yeah.